My mentor from Interscope, longtime guy there. I don't know if you know Tony Ferguson, but he's around forever.
I know the name.
When he was on the podcast, we talked about that quote of it's not personal, it's just business. And he sees that quote as bullshit. Like, it's always personal to some degree.
No, for sure. I think for me, you know, we're working in music. You know what I mean? We're not working in, you know, something that is maybe easily more transactional, or, you know, something where it's like I'm selling widgets and
exactly an assembly line with like widgets. Yeah,
exactly. It's like these are feelings. These are, you know, people that are making these songs. You know, often multiple people that are making one song, and for me, like Rostrum it's hard not to take things personally. You know, and I've gotten better over the course of time, where separating myself from the business and not getting my feelings wrapped up into everything,
which seems like a real magic act, because you're putting yourself into these projects in a way where you said the majors might not.
I don't want to say that they don't, but I can just say that we do. It's hard not to take things personally, but you do get better, or your skin gets thicker to deal with certain situations. Or you take it personally, but it doesn't affect you as much as maybe when you're coming up or you're a little bit younger or whatever. It's like you have your priorities more in check. You know who you are. You're confident in who you are. So if certain things happen, it doesn't affect you as much. Everyone has their own path to getting there. You know what I mean? And some people might get there way faster. And some people are more resilient in not letting things affect them. And some people aren't, you know, and so it might take longer for that kind of person, you know, to get there. You know, I'm 43, so it's like I have a family, I have 2 kids, and, you know, and so I don't get as wrapped up in all of the day-to-day drama or this, that, or the other, because I'm focused over here. Once you have who you are and like kind of what you do, those sorts of curveballs or hits and misses like become easier to sort of deal with. But certainly when you're sort of making your way into it and hustling in and doing all that kind of stuff, you know, trying to hit as many marks as possible is definitely important. But yeah, I mean, I wouldn't suggest taking those things that seriously. A lot of it's out of your control.
Yes.
You know, and so you have to do the best job that you can do. You know, put yourself in as many positive situations as you can, and hopefully things start to work out for you. You get to the next level, and then you work from that level to get to the next level, and to protect yourself from some of the negative energy that's out there. You know, I've had to create boundaries with certain artists or certain teams or whatever, where I was just like, this isn't giving me energy. You know, it's like taking away energy and not in a productive way. And you have to be okay at some point to say no to certain things, or to part ways with certain people, or do certain things like that for the betterment of yourself, you know, and kind of remember to put yourself and your sanity and your happiness and, you know, and all of that kind of stuff first, you know, which is difficult in the music business because it's
24/7, right?
It's always going. You have to create those boundaries, or it's going to eat you up.
Well said.
What I tell people is, look, you know, everyone wants to be like the CEO, like their second day being an intern, being an intern. And so to me, I tell you, like, look, even if the job that you're doing, you know, or the internship that you're doing isn't like super interesting or whatever, it's like just proving that you can show up every day, be reliable, do what needs to be done, will get you to the next level. Because my first job in the music industry was as L.A. Reid's assistant at Arista. And so when I applied for that job, who do they call, right? They call the people that you interned for to say, hey, we're thinking about hiring Benjy. You know, what was he like? If you fucked off because it wasn't so interesting, or I'm not doing all that, you know, much important work or whatever, you're not going to get a great recommendation for the job that you actually do.
It's short-sighted.
It's short-sighted. So show up, be positive, do the best job that you can, because when that opportunity does come, they have to call somebody to make, you know, for references, and they're going to say, yeah, he showed up every day. You know, he did everything we asked him to. He was thorough. You know, he was positive. that's what's going to lead you to where you want to go. All of a sudden, I was LA Reid's assistant, and it was like this just dream job of just being at one of the hottest labels at the time, right? Arista. We had, Outkast and Usher and TLC and Avril Lavigne and Pink, and just, it was crazy. And I'm, sort of like next to the guy.
You're in the epicenter of it. Yeah, sure.
And so just getting to see how everything works, and really gave me a really strong overview of what goes into a label and all the different parts of it. And so I felt like it was even better than being in one particular department. Like being with the president, it's sort of like you see how they all work together, and I think it helped me in building Rostrum in later years to like have that experience of being at the center like that.
When you took on that job with LA, were you thinking, hey, one day I'd like to start a label, or were you just kind of seeing where it goes?
So at the time I was writing music. And so nights, weekends, whatever, when I wasn't doing my thing at Arista, like I was, teaching myself how to produce. I was DJing.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah. And so I was really working on the creative side of me. And no, my goal at the time when I was at Arista was like, I would love to do A&R. And so over the course of the 3 years that I was there, I started sitting in on the A&R meetings. I started, bringing in artists and bringing in songs for other artists. But I kind of just realized as I got closer to actually being an A&R, officially an A&R person there, I had all these things that I wanted to do, these projects that I wanted to make that weren't necessarily major label projects. And I wanted more time to explore as a producer. And so I just decided, like, instead of working my way up this ladder, like I'm gonna start my own thing and work on some passion projects that I have. And it was one of those things when you're like young and you don't have any responsibilities to anybody and you're naive and you're like, yeah, sure, I'm gonna start a record company.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like you're 25 and and I'm really glad I did it. But looking back at my younger self, I'm like, wow, like that was bold, because you're like going from this great job to like literally sitting by yourself in the apartment that you share with 3 friends, figuring it out, like how to do it. Did
that unnerve you at all at any point?
So my last day of Arista was a Friday. That weekend I had a friend's wedding that I went to, and then Monday morning was a bit of a shock, right? Because it was like my last day, I'm at the wedding doing my thing. Monday morning you wake up in your apartment and you're like, all right, I have to do something. I have to figure this out.
Shit just got real.
Yeah, it just got real. Like
Yeah.
This was your idea, and now the reality is you're alone in your apartment, with your computer, and you have to figure out where you're going to go from here. And and it was scary. But it's one of those things where you just have to put one foot in front of the other and take it day by day, and it led me in the right direction.
Let's balance this out a little bit, though. On a scale of 1 to 10, what number was your passion running at that point for what you were doing? I would assume it was like above an 8 or a 9.
Oh yeah.
So that kind of balances out the fear part of it, doesn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. But you have to mention the fear. It wouldn't be like honest if I just said like, yeah, and then Monday I just jumped into it and started doing my thing.
Passionate.
And it was no problem at all. It was like, it's like, fuck, this is real. You know what I mean? And going from being at the epicenter, as you said, of this major company working on all this stuff to being by yourself, having no team and just needing to figure it out is a big change. But yes, it is the passion for the music, for what I was thinking in my head of what the projects that I wanted to do, and doing it my own way that really sort of led me through it. Let's
go to how you first discovered Wiz. I'm wondering, might be an interesting story. I don't know it actually. Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe.
I have no idea, which is going to make this a spontaneous combo.
Yeah. So I'm in New York City I left Arista. I started Rostrum 2003. The first artist I worked with and signed to Rostrum was an artist named Nitty. I signed him to Rostrum. Rostrum then did a deal with Universal Records, which is now Republic Records, but at the time it was Universal Records. And we had a number one song for 4 weeks called Nasty Girl, and it was like, holy shit, like I only started my company last year.
Out of the gate, you had a number one?
Out of the gate, we're like going crazy. And
Amazing.
So I was feeling positive about things, but I'm from Pittsburgh, and in the back of my mind, I'm like, it would be really cool to find an artist from Pittsburgh and do that. And so it just so happens that a friend of mine from high school who had been in a rap group was managing a young Wiz Khalifa. He said, I know you started a record company, there's a couple of artists here, and there was this compilation, this ID Labs compilation. ID Labs is a studio in Pittsburgh, compilation that, and a few artists really stuck out, and one of them was Wiz. And so when I went back for Thanksgiving break in 2004, I met with Wiz. And Nitty was really going at that time. Like we had just come back from an Australian tour. And so I had something to show for what Rostrum is, or what
you had
can
a little
be done.
track record going, at least.
Because the first thing is like, all right, I worked at Arista Records. I was L.A. Reid's assistant. That's like one stamp of approval, right?
Sure.
But then to sign an artist and have successful song and it be big internationally,
the pitch becomes easier.
I mean, there's a little bit more of a track record, right? And he was a high school student. He it was a different era, right? It's not like SoundCloud was there or whatever. So it's not like there was music out or anything, but he was just really, really talented. And so we met then in Thanksgiving, and we signed in early 2005. And we just started going, and from there, it took years.
One of the favorite things I've heard you share with me, Black and Yellow, the one that broke Wiz.
Yeah, that's 5 years later, by the way.
5 years later from this meeting.
From what we're talking about.
Okay, and you told me the quote loosely was, anybody that tells you from the record label or anybody involved with it that they knew this song was going to be massive is lying to you.
Yes, it is true that it was supposed to be a setup record. It was like, Wiz had made that record with Stargate. We are continuing to work on the album, but everyone, thought the song was a good song, and it was something to, put out. Like, hey, we're working on the album. Here's a song that we made. Yeah. Not like this is going to be a number one record, right? Which it ended up being. And
it's an iconic record, man. I mean, it's great.
Yeah,
like nobody knew that. To that level.
No, none of us thought that. It wasn't like, oh man, we're going to put out Black and Yellow and it's going to be a number one record. Yeah. It was like, let's put out Black and Yellow so that, we can just kind of show them stuff that Wiz is on, and then go to another song, and then, and build up to the album kind of a thing. And so, but it just like went crazy.
Capsule that time of early Rostrum. I imagine that there was a lot of like, is this going to work? There was, some of that, even though you had the Nitty record take off. Is that fair to say?
A ton of that. I mean, look, the Nitty record takes off, but it's somewhat short-lived, right? We ended up doing an album with Universal. The album didn't do well. Universal drops Nitty. And so that chapter is over, right? I had signed Wiz by then, but it's not like, it's only money going out the door, right? It's not money. There's no money coming in the door. And so it's figuring out, all right, how do you keep the lights on? How do you pay your rent? And how do you pay for studio time? And we're making these mixtapes. So it's like, how do you give this producer $100?
And you were in this place for at least a few years, right? Yeah.
Sometimes when you sign to a major, you feel like, okay, well, you're passing the baton. Like, all right, we did all this hard work up until here. And now there's this big building with lots of people and whatever. It's like, they must be able to handle it from here.
Yeah, can you run with this now, please? Yeah, I get it.
But that's not how it really is. Like, you have to keep going as if they don't exist, and so, we really learned that, like, look, you can't trust other people to just kind of run with it. Like you have to keep running with it and they have to keep up with you. So that's one of the big lessons I learned was like, you can't just get signed and expect them to do it, because we really felt like we were stagnating, and it was really when we knew we didn't have a major label to rely on that we were always growing. And so it's like, oh, okay, that means like we have to keep doing this always, no matter what, even if we do another deal, you know, that we just need to put it into overdrive, not pull back at all. And so when we ended up doing a deal with Atlantic Records a number of years later, like that lesson was still with us. So it was still like go, 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 go. And Atlantic was a great partner in sort of adding everything that they added into it to take it to a whole different level.
So talk to me about those few years where you said money's going out. Am I going to make rent? Like, well, let's really dig in and say how rocky did it get?
Yeah, so getting back to that, you know, there's a little money in the singles deal. You know, we're talking, a couple thousand, you know, here and there. But it's not money where it's like, all right, we're straight, you know? And so when that goes away and you're back to grinding independently and figuring it out, even when you've had these successes, there's still doubt in your mind, like how long can I keep this going? There's still those doubts. Is this going to work out? Is it going to get any bigger than this? Or is it just are we going to continue to spin our wheels? And Wiz is who he is today, and everyone knows kind of how the story went, at least, you know, over the last 10 years. But at that time, you don't know how the story is going to go, right? You know, the story isn't written yet. And so is this just going to just fall apart? You know, is something really going to happen? And, you know, I had talks with my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, you know, like, I don't know how much longer I can keep this going. You know, maybe I should be a music teacher. Maybe I should do this. Maybe I should do that. And it was right after that conversation that I had with her that it started to pick up. All of a sudden it started going, and then this happened and that happened, and then it just started going crazy. But like, I was thinking, like, I don't know how much longer I can do this, keep this going. I've been keeping it going for years, you know, and you don't know how it's going to go. This Warner Brothers thing didn't quite work out. Like, we're back independent, which felt good, but at the same time, it's like, all right, all of it is on us again. Yeah,
I mean, like, to use an Entourage reference, were you like, you were like E and he was like Vince for a minute there? Like, how big was the roster at that point? I mean, we didn't talk about that. It was like maybe another artist besides him, or what?
A couple artists,
So pretty lean.
Pretty much all Pittsburgh based.
Right.
At the time.
Obviously, none of them bringing in any money.
No. So it was a struggle, but I believed in what we were doing. I believed at my core that this was going to go somewhere. And so even when those doubts creep in, I don't know how long I can do it. I keep this going, you know, you just kind of keep going. And when you push long enough, sometimes something happens, you know.
Some of these like breaks we catch when we're building, like, you can't plan or predict, right?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Like no one said like, all right, we're gonna release Black and Yellow. It's gonna be a huge song. The Steelers are gonna do well, and this, you know what I mean? It's like you don't put that together, you know. But when it starts showing itself, then you harness it, right? Like, all right, let's perform, you know, at Heinz Field, you know, for the playoff game, and let's do all these things. But you didn't plan months ahead of time that this was what the situation would be.
There's a guy that he created a bracelet company called My Intent, where you put a word that's meaningful to you, and they sort of stamp it on this gold circle and like give you a bracelet. And so he happened to be like randomly at like a friend brought him the Rock Nation lunch and was like, here, like, you can set up over here and try and give these out here. Jay-Z happened to obviously be at the Rock Nation thing and liked the idea, got one. Well, Kanye not long after found out about this from Jay-Z, and he happened to be shooting the Time magazine Most Influential Person cover, and literally had his word was beautify, and put it like boom, like that on the Time Most Influential Person of the Year. And I talked to the guy that created this thing, and he's like, where do you put that in the business plan?
Right.
And that's just
no, I mean, you can't base your marketing plan off of things like that happening, but if and when they do happen, it's a beautiful thing. You just can't it's like in the music industry, like, you know, it's great to have a great sync in like a big trailer for the big movie, but you can't base your marketing plan off of hoping that happens.
Of course.
Because if it happens, awesome. But you have to have a totally different plan, you know, assuming that that's not going to happen.